So before I begin with about Palo Alto Firewall, okay, I'll just clarify a few things related to Palo Alto, and I'll also clarify what to expect from the training and what not to expect. Okay, just so that whoever enrolls or they have their expectations clear, and I'll also clarify some expectations from my side. Okay, and please mute yourself if you are just so that we don't have a background noise. If you're not speaking, mute yourself. So to begin with, okay, I'll tell you, security, when you say there is a lot of vendors, having different products. So most of the people start their networking journey into Cisco somewhere, okay, with the routing, switching and stuff. So first thing that this training assumes is, a quite solid knowledge on routing and switching, okay? Like I'll assume what is an IP address, what's routing table, all the basic things, or you can say kind of, I'll assume that you have CCNA routing switching level knowledge, okay? And that's important as well, because even the Palo Alto firewall training doesn't take in consideration the beginners. Okay. Now one thing I'll clarify here is that when you begin with Cisco, okay, and generally people have started somewhere into Cisco, so I'll begin from there. Like when you start with Cisco, generally they have a very organized system and study material, and there's a lot of Cisco press authors, and they have been for a long time into this market. Okay, so what you notice generally is that the learning curve when you begin with Cisco, like even CCNA, the learning curve is very slowly it starts to go higher. Like you start from the basics. If you start with CCNA, like TCP/IP model, this kind of stuff, what is IP address, what is router, and then it goes into maybe a little bit more advanced stuff like NAT, ACL and stuff. But compared to Cisco, people, or I would say other vendors like Juniper, Palo Alto, or whatsoever other vendor you talk about, generally they are not a good place to start your networking journey into. Like if you say, I'll just compare quickly. Suppose if you go for JNCIA, okay, now JNCIA, it's kind of like the CCN of Juniper. They assume that what is IP address, they assume that what is routing, what is router, and a lot of other stuff like this. Okay, so it's not like they start like this. If you talk about JNCIA, they somewhere start, they assume a lot of knowledge. Okay, similar to that, okay, I'm not saying Palo Alto Firewall assumes you have Palo Alto knowledge, but Palo Alto Firewall training will assume that you have a solid knowledge of routing switching. Okay, plus generally you will feel that the training is somewhere like that. Okay, you might have worked and the basics of security. Like it doesn't start with like very fundamental things like what is VPN, okay, or what is firewall. Okay, although I've tried to include that part in the training, because a lot of times people who are going for this Palo Alto training, it's like their first firewall that they learn. Okay, but if you ask my recommendation, I would say it is better to if you are beginning into security and you want to continue for long, preferably begin with Cisco and then move to Palo Alto. Okay, what happens is, like if you talk about CCNA security and ASA and stuff, they start from very base, like like the fundamentals of VPN. They discuss that, they discuss many security aspects before they move into advanced stuff. So this is it is good, or it's easier to understand Palo Alto if you have some form of security background. Okay, That being said, I'm not saying like it is important. There is obviously Palo Alto cannot say that there is CCNA is the prerequisite of PCNSE. Okay, but somewhere general recommendation. Whosoever has gone through the Palo Alto training, they'll say preferably have some knowledge of some security products before you jump into this. Okay, now I'll just quickly take you to I-Medita website. And now, what is the course outline? It's already here. Okay, I'll just zoom it a little bit. Okay.
बोलता है अब मैं उसको समझा देता हूँ, अब बोलता है तो बोल नहीं सकता, मैंने भी एक अलग से मेल डाल दी इवेंट में ऐसा बोल दिया और
okay, fine. So these are kind of the highlights of what we are going to cover here. Okay, we are going to start with like about Palo Alto Networks, like why is it important, okay, to know their firewall, what are the certification available. We'll discuss from beginning, like an introduction, what really means next generation. Okay, we'll discuss the architecture, initial configuration, like interface configuration, and a lot of basic like static routes and stuff. Then we'll go into security and NAT policies. Okay, initial configuration will also include like stuff like how to take backup of configuration, how to upgrade firewall, or how to some basic stuff, just like you have router basics in CCNA. We'll go through that firewall basics stuff. Okay, then we'll go through app ID. Okay, app ID is their flagship stuff, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people go for Palo Alto Networks firewall. Okay, content ID is all the next generation firewall related stuff, like antivirus, anti-malware, and many others. Okay, URL filtering can be done, okay, in Palo Alto firewall itself. So similarly, we'll talk about decryption, wildfire, user ID. Okay, these are kind of the high level topics that we are going to discuss. Okay, now training wise, I'll tell you, or if you have come from Cisco, you might have seen that what Cisco does, okay, they kind of decentralize the security a lot. Okay, like if you come from the Cisco, you might have heard of these products. I'm just giving you an overview, like what this will set expectations clear. Okay, like you might have heard of ASA firewall, right? And then there is they have something called web security appliance. Okay, so if you want firewall, you can buy adaptive security appliance. If you want URL filtering to be done, you can have web security appliance, which allows you to filter stuff like, okay, we don't want alcohol, drug abuse websites or adult content websites to be allowed to be opened in the corporate network. So web security appliances for that. So similarly, if you see further, we want email security from Trojans and viruses and email related security. So they have email security appliance. So this goes on like this. Okay, and somewhere you might have heard of identity services engine, ICE, and like this. Okay, now it's quite decentralized approach, as in there's many products offered from Cisco. Okay, and compared to Palo Alto, I'll tell you, they have taken a very integrated approach into security. Like if you want to have a firewall, you have Palo Alto firewall. Okay, if you want to do URL filtering, web security appliance related stuff, that can be done here. I'm not saying all of the functionality of email security appliance is there, but quite a lot common required email security related stuff is there. Even somewhere, some parts of identity services engine functionality, they are there in Palo Alto firewall. So they don't sell this decentralized product suite. Instead of that, they sell this one single box solution, and that is their vision. Okay, like if you even think about it this way, there is a guy named Nirzuk, their founder. Okay, and this guy, okay, he has been very, he has been into networking industry for quite a while. Actually, why I'm giving you this overview is like, this is a company founded by a technical person for firewalls and network security, whereas compared to a lot of other companies are run, by people who are non-technical. Okay, founders are non-technical sometimes. So what happens is, like, I'll give you an overview in the slides as well. But the thing is, this guy was the first guy who invented kind of, or brought in the concept of IPS. Okay, so he has been into networking for quite a while. Okay, and it's his approach that he thinks that, this is not a good security model, having multiple solutions. It's better to have one single box solution. And the vision of the founder of Palo Alto is like, okay, somewhere if in future there is something new which is required for the security, we'll add up that functionality into this box so that you don't have to, make it a decentralized security. Okay, we'll discuss that in detail. Okay, and I'll just start. Okay, like about Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, so about Palo Alto Networks, just because a lot of people sometimes they don't know about the company. It was founded in 2005, just to give you a little overview. And if you look at the history of this guy, okay, he has been a principal engineer at Checkpoint. Then he was founder of One Secure, okay, who kind of brought in the concept of intrusion prevention system. Sometimes people debate it, but mostly before this, people used to have intrusion detection system. It was like, not preventing, actually just detecting that, okay, there was something that bad happened. Okay, we'll not go into much into IDS, IPS differences, but then he made NetScreen, and which was acquired by Juniper. If you have been into security, you might have heard of this firewall. So, he has been into security for quite a while. Okay, and what Palo Alto Networks has done is they have created these, industry changing things. Like, they were kind of the first who brought this concept of next gen firewall. You might say that, it's kind of a new marketing term. Okay, but somewhere they brought in some new concepts to the way the security is done as well. Okay, like if you look at the app ID and user ID, I'll just give you an overview here. Okay, because we will talk a significant, like, 2 hours of stuff for app ID, or another 2 hours of user ID, content ID. So I'll not be able to complete it right away. Okay, but I'll just give you an overview, like what is app ID. Okay, what happens here is, like, generally speaking, network engineers go till layer 4, right? If we talk from OSI model point of view, right? And security is done or used to be done based on, port numbers. Okay, now a problem with that is a lot of applications are becoming, web based. If you see and if you notice, in the past years, many applications have become HTTP based, right? I remember, like, I come from VoIP background as well, so like when I began my VoIP journey, there was no web browser based meeting solutions. Okay, but somewhere, a lot of companies have now come up with meeting solutions which can be used directly on their website. So the problem is, like, now, when somebody utilizes HTTP at layer 4, what do you see? You see TCP port number 80, right? Now problem is HTTP can be used for, from corporate network point of view, good stuff as well as bad stuff, right? You can maybe, check Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, or YouTube and that kind of stuff. At the same time, you might be, doing some productive stuff of Office 365. There are a lot of applications which are good for business, but at the same time, there are some applications which are kind of unproductive. I'm not saying bad for business always, but unproductive. But if you decide just based on port number, okay, then it is very difficult to understand or allow and not allow certain thing, because if you allow just based on port number 80, then you have allowed all HTTP based applications, and maybe somebody is trying to do torrent downloading as well. What is App ID is that Palo Alto Networks has made a database of around 3,000 plus applications, okay, in which they you can, as a security engineer, you can decide very granularly, okay. I'm just telling you from, a layman perspective. I'm not going into details of technicality of it right away. What you can do is, as a security engineer, you can decide like, okay, I want to give Facebook access, and even granular, like I can give access of maybe Facebook, base, that means text based content, or maybe I don't want to give image based access or Facebook video based access, or maybe I want to give access of Facebook full, but I don't want to give the Facebook chat functionality. So you can, this is not something based on layer 4, right? This is something a very different approach compared to the traditional approach. Like even I'll tell you, like WhatsApp, okay, you can give access like, okay, I want to give access of WhatsApp, but I don't want to give access of WhatsApp image or video content. So if a user is chatting, because a lot of businesses are adopting WhatsApp for their businesses for various purposes, you can say, okay, I'll allow you to chat and image content, but obviously we don't want, we don't send any video content to the customer, so I don't want to allow video content. So this is very granular approach. That is what App ID can do. Basically, it's like application ID, okay. Then there is something called user ID, okay. User ID is their way of saying that, like for example, okay, ABC company, what I want is that maybe the marketing team, the social media marketing team, I want to give them access of Twitter, Facebook, and all other social media platforms. But maybe I don't want to give them access to other users. So what you can do is you can be granular about user ID based identification, as in I can give a user group, particular user group, an access of certain application and block other users from accessing that, okay. Now this is obviously done using some kind of centralized user repository, like Active Directory. A lot of companies have Active Directory where they have user IDs of all the users, and there are many other options available as well. So we usually here or commonly Palo Alto Firewall is integrated to these kind of centralized directory services using LDAP. Okay, but there are other options available as well. Then there is Content ID. Content ID is related to all the stuff like antivirus. If a user is trying to download a virus infected file, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, then firewall itself can prevent download of that, so that we don't allow the infected file to come into the network and maybe spread like corona. So content ID, okay. Another things you can do is you can have file blocking here, okay. Like File blocking in the sense like, suppose, we don't want people to be allowed to download exe files from internet, because maybe they get an infected exe file, or maybe they get an attachment in email. Okay, so we can decide which file types are particularly allowed and which are not allowed. Even URL filtering is part of content ID, and there is many other things. I'll not go into that. So these are kind of the innovations. I'm not saying like, other vendors don't have these now, but Palo Alto Networks was one of the first companies to bring these things and kind of integrate it with the firewall. Okay, so they built the next generation firewall that identifies around 3,000 plus applications, like I told you already. So now if you look at this, okay, here, this is from Gartner. Okay, there is a company named Gartner. Okay, what they do is they do this market survey. Okay, and this is, you can think of it as a general career advice for any technical person. Okay, see, any technical person, we don't want to be jobless, right? So most of the times, if you notice that sometimes what happens is with technical people, they fall in love with a particular vendor. Okay, this can be a general career advice as well. Okay, like suppose, I fall in love with the ABC vendor of networking equipments. I say, these are the best router switches there can be in the world. And then I just don't improve my skill to any other vendor, and suddenly someday, their products become obsolete from the market, and then, I'm jobless, or it's hard for me to do a job switch. So even I recommend to a lot of students that, every 2 to 3 years, you should keep on checking, like, what's hot selling in the market in terms of your technology. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I also deliver training for VoIP, and I'm kind of I've been now delivering training, and as well as consulting for VoIP for quite a number of years now, almost eight years or so. So I'll just give an example, like what to do. Okay, basically, suppose if I just go to Google and search Gartner Magic Quadrant. Okay, there are many Gartner Magic Quadrants. Now what they do is, like, basically they divide it into 4 things. Okay, their Magic Quadrant divided into 4 things: challengers, leaders, visionaries, niche players, and they make this graph kind of stuff. Yeah. Now what happens here is, like, the further the company is here, somewhere in the leaders, and that vendor's technology, it's better. Okay, like if you see, suppose I just go into Gartner Magic Quadrant, and suppose I search for unified communication. Okay, that is the marketing name or for VoIP. Okay, so if I search for Gartner Magic Quadrant for unified communication, okay, every year they do this survey. And if you see here that, I'm just opening some, like old, but you can search, put a year so that you can get the latest one. I'll just open, suppose, from this, okay, 2017 from Cisco. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, what you'll notice here is, like, in the market leaders, okay, it might take some time because it's a high resolution image, but somewhere in the market leader, there is Cisco, Microsoft. Okay, I know I've opened it earlier. So now they are the market leaders into unified communications. So if I have knowledge of Cisco and Microsoft, and I am having my career into unified communication, it's a good stuff. Good to it's good for my career. But if I am very good into a vendor whose name is not mentioned anywhere in this whole quadrant, then my career is doomed. So you can think of that as like a career advice. So every 2 to 3 years, or every 2 to 3 years, just check, and build on your skills like that. So if you look at now the firewalls, there are four common, four market leaders into the firewalls. Okay, there is Palo Alto Networks, which is, this is debatable who is 1, 2, 3, 4, but generally speaking, the farther somebody is away from this, they are regarded as one. So Palo Alto Networks is regarded as kind of the market leader into enterprise firewall category. There is Fortinet, Checkpoint, and Cisco. So if you as a security engineer know these four firewalls, it's very less likely that you are jobless. Okay, because I'm not saying like learn all of them, but maybe security you learn two of the vendors or one of the vendors. But what you'll notice here is that there are a lot of vendors which maybe you are working on and whose name are somewhere in the niche players. Even Juniper is regarded as somewhere a small time player in terms of security. Okay, not in terms of routing switching. In terms of enterprise networking, there is a different perspective. Now, I'll just, I'm just giving an activity, do it later. Okay, I'm not going to waste your time just by Googling stuff. But if you look at, 2018, 17, just go back a couple of years, what you'll notice is that when Palo Alto Networks brought these things, innovated these things, even Cisco had somewhere gone out of the market leaders, and there were, these two people selling their firewalls a lot. Okay, so what I mean to say is like, as of now, what they have done is they have captured a lot of market of Europe, US, and even Australia. Okay, and most of you I think are from India itself, so I think that we don't care much about security, right? We are people who like to save money everywhere, so they didn't concentrate much on the Asian market because it's a sensitive market. Okay, so somewhere now Palo Alto Networks has started concentrating their business on Asian market as well. But somewhere most of the times, you are working on projects of Europe, US, Australia. They are already having a very good market share there. Now, another thing I'll clarify here, because some people might be, Cisco lovers. So they say, okay, firepower is what Cisco has, which can do next generation firewall stuff. See, I'm not bad, but Cisco acquired firepower. Like next generation firewall, there was two companies who were making next generation firewall, firepower, Palo Alto. Cisco acquired firepower. So when the company acquires, it takes some transition phase to get all the things streamlined. From my, people I know who work on firepower, compared to Palo Alto, this is less stable product. Although we deliver training on firepower as well at I-Medita, we deliver training for firepower, but industry-wise, it is regarded as less stable product. There's a lot of bug fixes that are still going on. So generally speaking, and again, I'll just clarify here. Sometimes, people start thinking, okay, he's trying to say that Palo Alto is the best. See, I'm not saying any firewall is the best. It depends on company to company, okay? But often at times, I'll just give you a quick comparison into different vendors so that you have a clearer picture, okay? If you ask me which firewall is best or which firewall vendor is best, I'll answer it depends, okay? Why I'm saying it depends, it's just like asking somebody, which car is best to buy, okay? So you can't say like Wagner is best for everyone, right? If somebody has got a huge budget, they might go for multiple vendors in firewalls. So, just like that, or maybe, what kind of functionality we expect from the network device, that also matters. So, commonly, you should concentrate on one of these 4 vendors at least if you're building your career into security. And the more, the better. Okay. So, let me start with like Palo Alto certifications, as in, what certifications are available there. They have created these 3 levels, but don't think that this is CCNA, this is CCNP, and this is CCIE. No, not like that. Okay. Frankly speaking, this is for college kids. Okay. Because if you talk about this particular certification, it talks about stuff like the basics of cybersecurity, like, okay, what is what firewall, what is a VPN, but in theory. So it is for college kids, maybe, who are just beginning into cybersecurity. They don't know this kind of stuff. So frankly speaking, if you do this certification and go to any company, most likely this is not regarded as very highly in the industry. Okay. Somewhere people, we are going to go for a blend of these 2 combined together. Okay. Because there is a very thin line into what is in PCNSE and what is in PCNSE. But this is what covers their firewalls related stuff. Okay. So this is kind of like, an intermediate, and this is kind of like an advanced course. So we are going to cover kind of a blend of both. What we are not going to cover is Panorama. Okay. We'll not cover Panorama. If you don't know what Panorama is, basically if you have a lot of firewalls of Palo Alto, you can have a Panorama appliance, physical or virtual machine, both are available, which can kind of, be a centralized solution to manage multiple firewalls. Okay. We'll discuss a little bit of details of Panorama, but practicals wise, we'll not touch Panorama. Basically, it's like kind of out of reach because of the licensing cost. So if you're expecting, although I'll give you a fair bit of idea of how you can work on it. Okay. But we'll not do practicals of Panorama. Okay. So I'll start with the basics of firewall. Okay. And also let me clarify like how we are going to do lab. Okay. Basically for lab, we are going to utilize Eve. There is a network emulator, Eve NG, Eve next generation. Those who have not heard of it, it's kind of like GNS, but not exactly GNS, far more superior, you can say, in a way compared to GNS. And on that, I'll run a firewall. I'll have a Windows PC, and we'll try to build something like common topology, like inside of our network, outside, maybe DMZ. Then we can decide what is allowed, what is not allowed. Then we'll do NAT and stuff. So this is this firewall. Okay. When you do lab, okay, this will be an unlicensed firewall, and a lot of functionalities are available on this unlicensed firewall. Okay. I'll not say all of it, like there are some things which are not available here, like URL filtering. Okay. App ID, I think it is available, but threat prevention stuff like antivirus, these kind of things are not available. For training point of view, I have a licensed firewall, which I'm going to utilize to show you the functionalities which we have just named. Like we'll see URL filtering. I'm not saying like I'll not show you URL filtering. I'll show you URL filtering practically. I'll show you antivirus. We'll try to download a virus. The firewall will block it. We'll see the licensed functionality, almost full functionality, except Panorama again. But this licensed firewall is kind of binded to my MAC address, or you can say kind of binded to my laptop, and it's paid, so I cannot copy and give it to everyone. Okay, even if I make a copy, it's going to, the license is going to expire on whosoever machine it gets copied to. So most of the functionality is available to test in unlicensed firewall as well. There are some things which you cannot do. Okay. So I'll start from the firewall basics. Okay. Now this is what is actually not part of Palo Alto certifications. And also another thing I'll tell you, what we do is we give you a handout, okay, a notes handout. That's kind of, you can say, all the slides that you are going to see. These are around 400 plus slides. You are going to get the hard copy of it printed in the form of notes handout. Okay, and generally, although this is a strange time that everybody is locked up and obviously will not be able to, hand you over till this lockdown is over. But generally, students make their notes on this book itself. Like there are some spaces left to write notes. I have tried to include most of the things in the notes handout in terms of the theory that is required. Frankly speaking, if you are going to go for the Palo Alto certifications and you don't remember the theory that is mentioned in the slides, you are going to fail in the certification exam. Okay, for sure. You will have to remember this stuff. There are very small details which they test you in certification exam, and we have created a workbook, a lab workbook. There are two, volume 1, volume 2, two books of this. This includes all the labs related stuff. Okay, this again you are going to get hard copy of it, so that you can just, if you just follow through this, you will be able to perform the practicals on your own. Wherever you are stuck, I'm there for you, but most of the times when you try to do labs, you cannot take screenshots and of everything. You cannot take all the CLI related stuff or all the GUI related stuff. So workbook includes all that. Okay. Plus there will be a PCNSE study guide that we'll give you again in hard copy. These three things are, you will have to go through this. If you are going for certification, this is highly recommended, go through this. Okay. Basically, Palo Alto has no Palo Alto Press kind of thing. Like, Cisco has Cisco Press, which makes very wonderful books, very organized. Palo Alto doesn't have anything like this. So, for studying the theory, you'll have to go through study guide. Okay, you'll have to go through the notes handout, and for labs, you can stick to this. Okay, while delivering the training, I'll go back and forth through the documentation of Palo Alto Networks, and I'll give you certain hints onto, like, okay, suppose I complete one topic, I'll just give you like, okay, read these 4 to 10 pages from this document. Preferably if you can follow, and although I know not everyone is willing to read, but if you, whenever I give you like, read this stuff from here, read this stuff from there, if you read, it will be better for you in terms of understanding of the whole class. Okay. So any questions before I, till now, before I jump into the firewall basics and Palo Alto architecture later?
Sir, I have a question here.
Yeah.
So will we get the case studies as well on Palo Alto?
Will we get what?
Case studies.
Case studies, see, I can guide you into certain places in documentation where you can see stuff, but again, it's like, I'll tell you, the Palo Alto has not made a lot of case studies kind of stuff available at their website. So
Okay.
I can discuss stuff like, this is how commonly do it, this is how it is recommended to do it in terms of production network. But as in, some reading material wise, it will be, I don't want to, commit any specific.
Not exactly for reading actually, so it will help us in troubleshooting, like any troubleshooting scenarios that that's prevalent.
See,
in
if you just parallelly follow the stuff that I am going to recommend, like when I suppose I discuss app ID, okay.
Yep.
After that, I'm going to tell you like, okay, read these 20 pages from here. If you follow that, most likely it will be clear enough to, to have clear understanding on even deploying. So you won't need any specific case studies.
Sure, sir.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Sudhanshu. Are we going to cover the full UTM features which is there in the Palo Alto?
What's your expectation, as in if you have any name in your mind?
Yeah, so like I'm working on the Fortinet. So basically when you consider the Fortinet, so it comes with the URL filtering, it comes with the application control, deep scanning, SSH scanning, full inspection. So are we going to cover this kind of UTM features?
Yeah, we are going to cover decryption. Decryption is what they say here. Okay. We are going to cover URL filtering. We'll do it. We'll discuss it theoretically. We'll discuss it practically, and perform the practical.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, Palo Alto, they don't like to call it UTM. Okay. We'll look at the difference between a UTM and next generation firewall from architecture point of view. So you can expect these things. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. I'll just go ahead with the basics. Okay. I'm sure some people, maybe 50% of you might be knowing what is a firewall, but please bear me if you know it already. Okay. So basically, when you talk about a firewall is basically a network security system. Like, you want to restrict what goes back and forth. So to do that, you have a firewall, okay, so that you can allow certain things and block certain things. Now, what it does is it establishes a barrier. Okay, you can like you have firewall in Windows even, right? So basically, if you go into the details of firewall types, there are broadly classified two types of firewall. Okay, network firewalls, which are in the form of hardware or virtual machines, and then there is host-based firewalls. Okay, host-based firewalls are like like our Windows has firewall, right? Where you can allow an application to maybe access certain thing and not allow certain other application to access a network. That's host-based firewalls. Mostly this course obviously is going to cover network firewalls, but just to give you an overview. Now, if you talk about the network firewalls further, generation wise or the evolution wise, there are three generations that is commonly regarded as in evolution terms. Like first generation, there is packet filtering. Okay, what is packet filtering firewall? I'm sure most of you might have created some time an access list in a router, right? That's kind of a very neat and clean example of a packet filtering firewall, or a packet filtering device. Basically, these were kind of the predecessors of firewall. And what you do is you create permit and deny rules, right, on the networking device to allow certain IP address to go out or block certain IP address from coming in, out. There are many options. Now, when a packet is received, there can be three things. Either the packet will be dropped silently, means you don't get any response back for the packet dropped. Second is it is rejected and an ICMP notification is sent to sender. Like if you have not noticed, maybe when you ping, okay, I'm just giving an example. Like this is my gateway here. Okay, sometimes you get things like this, right? Reply from this. This means that that particular device responded. Okay. Similarly, sometimes when you try to reach some place, okay, like I'm just taking suppose, let's say I'll have to draw a topology. Okay, I'm sure you have done ping enough to understand. What I mean to say is, sometimes instead of this, what you see is you get a reply like destination host unreachable, reply from a particular IP address, right? Now, what is that? Basically, suppose this router blocked something. Suppose it blocked this PCA from going out. When you receive destination host unreachable reply from this IP address, that means the router or whatever that device is, they are sending you a response back, an ICMP response back saying it is not allowed. Okay, so that is what I mean here, that it can silently drop the packet and not send you any ICMP notification in response, or it can reject the packet and send an ICMP notification to sender. Third is permit, which everybody loves. Okay. Now, when you talk about these packet filter, you can filter packets based on source address, destination address, protocol number, right? There is this, maybe if you don't remember, I'll just quickly show you IP header. Right, you might have seen source address, destination address. Similarly, there is a protocol number. Okay, protocol number, it tells what is encapsulated within the packet, like what are the contents of packet. Like if it is TCP content, then the protocol number will have a value of 6. Okay, if it is UDP, what is encapsulated within the packet, it will be 17. And there are many others like OSPF, EIGRP, 88, 89, and so it can filter based on protocol numbers as well, and source and destination port numbers. This might remind you of extended ACL of Cisco. Now, if you look at this packet filters, they don't maintain any conversational information. Like if this guy goes out, it doesn't maintain a state table that source IP this, destination IP this, went out, so I'll allow the return traffic to come in. So what is the problem with that? The problem is, since this router didn't maintain a state table, suppose, if you want to create ACL and allow everything, then you will have to create a rule to allow it to go out and create a rule to allow it to come in. Nothing is allowed in return by default. That is what they solved by making stateful firewall. What is a stateful firewall? Okay. Now, stateful firewall is like, this device, when it goes out, a state table is formed in the firewall where it maintains that, okay, source IP address A went out, the destination was whatsoever, okay, port number was whatever, and destination port. Now what happens with this is, suppose security policy allows A to go out and, and access this. The return traffic will not have to be allowed by any specific rule. Return traffic is allowed automatically because the firewall maintains a state information that, okay, this is a conversation going back and forth. So if A is allowed to go out, the return traffic coming from this source, destination, this need not to be specifically allowed separately. So they can do all the functions that packet filter firewalls do. Now, if you just read it in English, in addition to this, they maintain knowledge of specific conversation between endpoints by remembering which port number 2 IP addresses are using at layer 4, allowing examination of overall exchange between the nodes. So they are connection aware. So if there is a TCP three-way handshake and connection is established between them, it will be aware and allow all the traffic in both the directions if it is allowed from, according to the security policy. Now, commonly, if you talk about the difference between them, stateless treats every packet individually, okay? Whereas stateful, for a stream of packets, there will be one state table entry which will be utilized to allow those return traffic. Okay, this is just for your information because this is sometimes asked in the interview, so people are less clear on, okay, the stateless and stateful difference. Other thing is, obviously, this just has to, since stateless packet filtering doesn't have to maintain any state information, it is faster compared to stateful. Now, they do not keep track of any context or nature of traffic. Stateful firewalls are connection aware and stateless are connection unaware. Okay. Now,
so any example of stateless firewall?
See, basically stateless firewall is basically the router. That's why I've kept the router here. Okay. Just think of it as this way. If you have ACL, okay, and you have deny by default, okay, in and out. If you make a rule and make an entry in the out direction, for the return traffic, you will have to make an entry in the in direction as well, right? Because it doesn't allow automatically the return traffic. Whereas this stateful thing, it allows. So that's the main, actually you can say kind of initially, like, if you talk about Cisco, there was PIX, okay, but nobody utilizes this. Maybe people don't even remember the name. Okay, maybe I am now old to remember, but this is where the concept of firewall came from. Or you can say all the firewalls these days are stateful. Okay, there is no firewall which is not stateful. Okay. Then there is the third generation firewall, which is application-aware firewall. Now the problem with the second generation is they work based on layer 4, right? Like I was telling you earlier. If somebody accesses an application, an HTTP-based application, and something rogue comes inside, the firewall basically doesn't do anything about it. Firewall will allow it because since this is TCP port number 80, okay, you know, whatever traffic is allowed in, out, no problem. Now, this is where application aware firewalls basically get to deep packet inspection and go till, you know, the application layer. Now, benefit of this is it can understand that, you know, what kind of application is going. See, lot of applications are evasive. Okay. What do you mean by evasive? Right. So suppose, you know, if you talk about Skype, okay. If you ask what is the port number for Skype, there is no fixed port number. Okay. It can dynamically utilize any port number to go out. Okay. Any source destination port number. Now, since there is no standardized port number, problem with this kind of application is even if you have allowed for TCP/80 for HTTP and the firewall is a stateful firewall, Skype can utilize the same 80 port number to go out. Okay, which defeats the purpose because, you know, a lot of these applications like torrent applications, these are hard to block using a stateful firewall, right? But compared to that, if you talk about an application firewall, it can identify, it can do deep packet inspection and go look at the data at the application to understand if suppose this guy went for HTTP, then really the traffic is of web browsing, not of some, you know, if the guy used 80, it is really traffic of HTTP, not, you know, Skype. So this is useful as it is able to detect if an unwanted application is attempting to bypass firewall using a disallowed protocol on an allowed port number. Okay, fine. Now, when you compare stateful firewall and extension firewall, the problem is, like I told you, just work based on port numbers. Applications can, you know, bypass firewall easily. And again, like, you know, if you look at these applications, okay, all of these applications are, you know, HTTP based. But, you know, some of them are very good for business from productivity point of view, like WebEx, maybe Salesforce, okay. But at the same time, you know, other applications might be totally unproductive, okay. So next generation firewalls include all the functions of these stateful firewalls. Along with that, they can do these other things of, you know, doing deep packet inspection and include more layers of OSI model. Okay. So they do a more thorough inspection, check packet payloads and matching signature for harmful activities such as malware, antivirus and stuff as well. Now, commonly this is where people start thinking, okay, what is next generation? There is UTM which does this, right? So see, if you don't know what is a UTM, Unified Management, okay. If you go into the history, this is what a firewall is, but somewhere what happened is people started developing these firewall helper stuff. Like, okay, let's keep the firewall, but for antivirus, let's bring in another box which checks for viruses when they come from the internet. Okay. Now, at the same time, you want for identification of malware, you can have another box. For URL filtering, you can have a proxy. For intrusion prevention system, you can have all these, you know, lot of firewall helpers. So now the problem with having multiple firewall helpers is when traffic goes through these multiple boxes, okay, the delay is going to increase, right? Because the more the boxes, the more you increase the firewall helpers, delay will increase, right? Because each of these boxes has to process that. And lot of these things which they check are common, like every one of them will check layer 3 header. So people thought, okay, we'll build a UTM, Unified Threat Management System. Okay. See, firewall helpers have limited view of traffic, complex and costly to buy and maintain, because for all of this stuff you will have more engineers, right? Now if you make, this is what a UTM is, like pile them up together and we call it a UTM. Okay. Now again, if you put all of this stuff in same box, it is still a significant delay is there. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, and again, see, I don't want to debate on this, because there is no way that you can actually go into the firewall and see whether it is going through multiple components. But this is what Palo Alto people say. Okay, and I'll just quickly take an example from the checkpoint firewall. Okay, just to clarify it. These are similar things, can be taken as an example for Fortinet. See, basically, when you talk about checkpoint, okay, they are the people who brought this term of UTM. Okay, if you want to generalize, okay, I'll tell you. No offense to any Fortinet lovers, but frankly speaking, Fortinet is like MI of firewalls. Okay, people have MI mobiles. They don't innovate much, but they copy and paste newly researched stuff and sell it cheaper. So a lot of people buy their firewalls. No offense, okay? Whereas like Checkpoint, Palo Alto, and even Cisco and these, because they are well funded, and they kind of are like Apple and Samsung of these. Again, not taking any sides who is Apple, who is Samsung, but they kind of spend a lot of time researching stuff. Okay, so Checkpoint, what they did was, okay, they brought this term of UTM. Okay, and what happens here is with Checkpoint, okay, people who have worked on Checkpoint will maybe agree to me regarding this. There is a concept of blades there. Okay, like these common stuff, all these different things. The more functionalities you want, the more blades you enable. Okay.
Yes, yes.
When you enable more blades, even Checkpoint says the performance will degrade. Right? This is what Palo Alto even says, that if you use UTM, the performance will be degraded. And I'll tell you frankly, if you talk to any person who handles day in, day out lease line related complaints from customers, one of the first things that service providers ask customers to do is, if customer complains and says there is a delay, okay, what the first thing service provider is going to tell is plug in the lease line directly to a laptop or something like that and check the speed, instead of removing the firewall just to check the delay, because firewalls have now become with this reputation of increasing the delay because of UTM as well. Okay, so Palo Alto architecture is a bit different. We'll talk about that later. Okay, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to come to that today or not. We'll see. Okay, but in order to understand Palo Alto Networks firewall, I'll just quickly go through cyber attack life cycle. Okay, you might think why. See, basically, when you will notice all these different components of the Palo Alto Firewall, they are actually designed around some mitigation technique of cyber attack. So what happens here is, like, if you talk about any cyber attack, okay, I'll just quickly, suppose I want to attack somebody, okay, I'm an attacker. And what I do is, the first thing is I do reconnaissance. What is reconnaissance? Like, whosoever I want to attack, I gather information about them as much as possible. Like, suppose I gather information from LinkedIn, okay, who is their network engineer or security engineer, so that, you know, maybe I want to gain access to his system. Then I weaponize something, okay. This is discussed in very detail in CEH training generally, okay, but just please bear with me if you know it already. So weaponization is like, you know, suppose I get to know that, okay, you know, this ABC guy is the security engineer, and I do reconnaissance and find from the social media that, okay, you know, he shares a lot of posts related to cricket, suppose. So I know that, okay, you know, this guy is having interest in cricket. So if I get his email ID and send an attachment, suppose, okay, I weaponize a PDF file with maybe, you know, with the name like 100 greatest Indian cricket facts or something like that, and I deliver that in the email to him, it is more likely that this guy is going to click and open that email. So, you know, delivery is done using maybe email or, you know, some other form of mechanism. Then once that person opens it, whatever is delivered, maybe a malware infected PDF file, it can do exploitation and do backend installation, whatever privileges it requires, maybe, you know, admin level system access. Then, you know, it can, once the file is on his system, okay, it can exchange command and control traffic with the attacker, okay, and that command and control traffic, when it is exchanged with the attacker might say, okay, you know, from time to time I want screenshots to be taken of this guy. Maybe at sometimes I want webcam to be open based on, you know, whatever I want. Maybe I want logging to be done so that I can log all the passwords. So whatever objectives I have, maybe I want to exfiltrate some data, whatever it is, you can act on that. So these are, you know, the same things in plain English, okay. So you can give a reading if you want to. I'll just give you half a minute, and if any doubts, let me know. Okay, I think let's move to the next thing. So this is kind of the cyber attack life cycle, and a lot of things, once you understand of Palo Alto, it is similar to, you know, mitigating these things. So from deployment options point of view, okay, generally if an enterprise is already having a firewall, which most likely they will be having some kind of firewall, what happens is they go it in, you know, these phases, you can say, like, and I'll go into the details of interface types later. So this is kind of, you can say, step by step, you know, how to replace your firewall with the Palo Alto. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Sometimes people don't go for step 3 if they, you know, like if you see, this is a traditional firewall here. Let's first concentrate on this part. Okay. Now, what you see here is, and what you will, if you ask Palo Alto engineers to get you a firewall, what they are going to do is, just to demonstrate the capabilities of their device, they are going to say, you know what, just take our firewall and plug it into the switches somewhere. And if you know port mirroring, okay, or span, switch port analyzer is what we call it in Cisco, that whatever you send and receive here, send here, just give a copy of that to this firewall here, okay. So you will need some switch access configuration to, do this. Basically, you can say this is just, they are trying to give you a demo, okay. And I'll give you one more reason why they recommend you to do this, okay. So basically, if you see, this is not an inline deployment, like, nobody can, you don't have to have any security policy rules on Palo Alto Firewall for this, right? Because it will not allow you to go anywhere, basically, right? It's kind of a dead end of the network. Now, why they ask you to do it? What they do is they want to demonstrate like what is the difference between your traditional firewall and the next generation firewall. So what they'll do is they commonly ask customers that 10 to 15 days, or maybe if it is a very big customer, they'll say 30 days, keep this firewall as it is and make a span port with the Palo Alto firewall. And after 30 days or 10 to 15 days, whatever the time is, they'll start showing you the logs, saying, see, these are the applications that are being utilized. This is, these are the websites that are being accessed, so that they can basically demonstrate their product. Okay. Another reason I'll tell you why Palo Alto recommends, even if you have supposed you have released the purchase order and decided that okay I want to buy Palo Alto Firewall, still Palo Alto says that preferably keep this in this way for 15 to 20 days or 1 month if possible, so that enough logs are generated based on which you can make your security policy. Because see, sometimes what happens is, if you are moving from a traditional firewall to a next generation firewall, you don't really understand the depth of what is required to make a security policy. Like I'll give you an example. Like if you talk about Google search, okay. Google search in a traditional firewall is what? HTTP, right? Or basically from firewall perspective TCP/IP, right? And if somebody opens suppose imedita.com, this is also same, right? Whereas Palo Alto app ID recognizes Google search as a separate thing, and this is web browsing. So if you want to make a proper security policy rules, you will have to have sufficient logs so that you can make proper decisions in terms of what things I want to allow. Maybe you gain visibility from the logs that okay, people are trying to utilize torrent, which you are not knowing from your traditional firewall, but you get to know from Palo Alto and you block it. I hope you got the point, right? So this is the first step that Palo Alto recommends. Like it's written here, application user and content visibility without inline deployment. Then what they do is they say, now just get it inline deployed, and what happens now is you can keep this firewall as it is with all the security policy rules, and maybe partially start utilizing this firewall for the next generation features. Like maybe I don't make IP address based rules, but I start utilizing the antivirus or URL filtering or other content ID functionality in this, and I keep my traditional firewalls inline deployed with this. Okay. Now this is where some people stop. Okay, I'm not saying traditional firewall, but I know certain enterprises where they like to have it in multiple layers. So what they'll do is they'll not trust any particular vendor. They'll say, okay, we'll have one pair of Palo Alto, another pair of maybe Checkpoint. Okay, and like one of my one of the persons I know, he works for, he was working for a very highly secure solution for highly secretive project. I'll not say the name and stuff, but they had like 3 layers. Okay, I'm not saying like in this exact fashion, but they had like 3 different firewalls. Now you might say like, okay, what's the use of having 3 different vendors? See, sometimes there is a bug in one vendor. Okay, so if something gets past even one firewall, it's very hard to have the same kind of bug into multiple vendors. So sometimes people keep it, they just stop there. They don't replace the firewall. Okay, I hope you got the point, right? Now the third option, or some people, if this is a traditional firewall, you'll throw it out and now just bring all your rules on Palo Alto. Okay, and this is kind of like how you can deploy it. Okay, next let's talk about the security platform. Okay, now please bear with me because I'm going to introduce a lot of words, but I'll not be able to explain all the detailed information about everything. Palo Alto says that when you want to protect any network, okay, and it's a good concept to have in mind for any security engineer, they say that you have to protect 3 things of the business: cloud, network, endpoint. If you protect these 3 things, basically you protect the whole company. Okay, now what is their approach into this? For the network point of view, they have next generation firewall, which I introduced some basic functionalities of it. Okay, like app ID, content ID. It can identify and inspect all traffic. It can block known threats. Okay, threats which are known to it. Now what happens is Palo Alto has taken a community approach, and I'm not saying that they are the only vendor who has taken this approach, but you can think of it like they were kind of the initial people who brought this concept in, and now even Cisco and many other vendors have this kind of thing. They have something called a threat intelligence cloud. Okay, now what is a threat intelligence cloud? Think of it as this way, that all the different Palo Alto customers, okay, they, whenever they see something which is a threat, maybe a virus or malware or something like that, they take a community approach and send it to threat intelligence cloud. Now what's the benefit of that? Suppose this is customer A, customer B, customer C, customer D, like all different 4 companies. Okay, if company A gets attacked by some way or some method, if it shares the threat intelligence with the Palo Alto, it can inform that and update the dynamic updates of those other customers, so that a similar kind of attack is not possible on other customers. So it's kind of like a community approach. Okay, like WHO is doing for Corona. all the countries are sharing their data with them, so that they can correlate and decide based on that data. So threat intelligence cloud, basically next generation firewall can send unknown threats to cloud. Now also I'll give you one more, I'll introduce something here. Like you can, okay, it depends on configuration. You can ask that, okay, if you find a file suspicious, and you can decide it based on size of file as well, that if you want, you can upload that file to threat intelligence cloud. Okay, only if you want. Okay, this is optional. It's not like because some people will just go, why is my files going to the cloud? They can misuse and stuff. You can decide based on size, like maybe less than 5 MB size, and if it is an exe file, I want it to be shared to the threat intelligence cloud. Okay, if it is not a an unknown, if it is an unknown kind of file, it will be sent to threat intelligence cloud, where what they have is they have virtual machines which can a sandboxing kind of environment where they can run that file to see the behavior. Okay, and that threat intelligence can be shared with you in a detailed report. Okay, so unknown threats can be sent to cloud as well. This is extensible to mobile and virtual networks. How? You can have VPN. Cisco AnyConnect is very famous, right? So AnyConnect here, Palo Alto has Global Protect. Okay, just to give you a easy understanding. Whenever I say Global Protect, think of like a client, a client application being run in an endpoint. They have applications and apps for VPN apps for almost all the common endpoints like iPhone, Android, Windows, Mac. So Global Protect is there. Okay, this can extend the security to your mobile and virtual networks, because even if a person logs in from home, they'll create a VPN tunnel with the firewall. So all the URL filtering and things, they are applicable even when they are trying to work from home. Threat intelligence cloud, I told you already, gathers potential threats from network and endpoints, analyzes and correlates threat intelligence, disseminates threat intelligence to network and endpoints. Now, I'll tell you one more thing here. Now, suppose, if the attacker gives the potential victim a USB drive having the infected file, then there is no way that next generation firewall is going to protect you, because the user is going to plug it right here, right? And it's going to affect the system, right? So what happens in this case is, if you plug in a USB drive, and this basically spoils the whole concept, right? So Palo Alto Networks, what they have thought of for this solution, okay, and we are not going to go into the details. This is a whole separate training from Palo Alto which is available, although we are not, we don't deliver it right now. But they have a product called Traps. Okay, just to give you a easy understanding of it, think of it as an antivirus, anti-malware solution, just like AVG, Avast, and all these endpoint security solutions that you have for endpoints. But the good thing is, it talks to the Palo Alto Networks firewall, not directly. Okay, like all the different systems running Traps are going to share the threat intelligence with the antivirus server solution. Okay, and that can then talk to firewall, or actually that can also send information to threat intelligence cloud. So basically now they are trying to integrate the security of endpoint as well as network. They say that if it is a endpoint security and network security get together, and it's a more highly tight security compared to an endpoint security solution from some other vendor, okay, and network security solution from some other vendor, okay. So advanced endpoint protection, another another reason I'll tell you why they go for traps is, see, even the malwares have got complex in terms of their programming. Like, I'll give you an example, okay, and this comes from kind of ethical hacking stuff, but just it will maybe give you a better clarity, okay. Like, I want to infect Sudhanshu, suppose. Now, or attacker wants to infect Sudhanshu. Now what they are going to do is, maybe they deliver a exe file, but they can program it in such a way that trigger this exe file only if user is equal to Sudhanshu. Means, run do all the dirty malware related stuff, or whatever spyware related stuff, only if the user logged in is Sudhanshu. If it is not Sudhanshu, don't do anything. Now you might say, how can that be problematic? See, the problem is here, even if suppose next generation firewall sends it to the cloud, and Palo Alto Networks firewall or Palo Alto Networks people run it in the sandboxing environment, there the user won't be Sudhanshu. So basically that exe file verdict will never come as a malware or spyware. The verdict will come something like it's not a threat. Whereas when it is run on the endpoint, it can be problematic. So that is why Palo Alto says that we need an endpoint security solution, which, because we need to inspect all the processes that are running in the back end, so that we can understand all these things. And if there is something that runs at the back end which is malicious, we can find it using traps, because traps will be working on the endpoint itself, okay. So it prevents both known and unknown, and again it also integrates with the threat intelligence cloud, okay. Next, let's talk about Panorama, okay. Like I gave you an idea, as an admin, what you do is you take access of Panorama, okay, and GUI, I mean HTTPS access, although it can be accessed via CLI as well, and you make your security policies there. The benefit of this is, like, a lot of security policies are common, like for throughout the enterprise. Like, maybe if we have a Delhi site and Pune site, at both the sites we don't want people to be accessing maybe drug abuse websites, right? Now these kind of things, if you want common across the enterprise, you can make at the Panorama, so that they get pushed to all the firewalls of the enterprise. And now see, there are different devices with different requirements. Sometimes based on local cyber laws, there are different. So you can make device groups, as in maybe these two firewalls are group 1, these two firewalls are group 2. So you can push policies to group 1, and the same policies are not pushed to group 2. You can do this, okay. So basically it is a centralized network security management system that provides consolidated policy creation, okay, through a web interface. It comes in both VM and hardware appliance, both options. Also, the benefit of it is you can have a centralized management, logging and reporting. So even if you want to do software updates, you don't have to go on each and every firewall. This especially comes in handy for service providers. Like, I know one of my friends who, in their environment, they have 900 firewalls. Now imagine doing a software update on 900 firewalls. It's better to do that using Panorama, right? So these kind of things can be performed. You can simplify powerful policy creation to multiple firewalls by grouping them together. Okay. Also one good thing I'll tell you about Panorama is that the menu, okay, when you open the HTTPS access of Panorama, it is quite similar to Palo Alto Firewall. Like when you will open Palo Alto Firewall, you will see the same policies, objects, network, device, ACC, monitor, dashboard, all these options. Although this is a screenshot of Panorama, but all these options or UI, user interface, is same, so that if you have already a strong hold on Palo Alto Firewall, you don't have to learn Panorama from scratch. Like if you want to make a security policy, it will always be under policies, whether you make it on Panorama or on the Palo Alto Firewall. So it's a better approach, right? They have tried to solve this so that the user admin doesn't have to learn a lot of different UIs. Next, there is something called autofocus. Okay. Now, a lot of times what happens is, see, even if you have worked, you might have noticed, or maybe you might have got these kind of queries from, the security management team, CISSP guys, or, some managers sometimes, not CISSPs, but managers. I want to know what kind of attacks are being mitigated on the network. And, this is what you can do is they have built an autofocus, a hosted security service. If you have bought their threat intelligence licenses, you will be able to have this. The benefit of this will be all the different URLs, all the different malware samples, and all the intelligence that threat intelligence cloud gathers from your network as well as other customers, it can show you using this autofocus portal. Okay. Now see, this is for security operations and analysis team. This is for management people. This is not for configuration of anything on the security. Okay. See, like if you check here, what you have, okay, your organization on this date had this many malware sessions, right? And what are the top applications being accessed on your network? Top malwares, which are the firewalls? This is, your organization. And if you you can look at my industry, like maybe, we are into hospitality industry, or maybe we are into, business services industry, or whatsoever industry we are in. You can see the pattern of that. So you see, there is no configuration, right? Do you see any configuration options here? Do you see dashboard, search, alerts, tags, export list? There is no configuration options here, right? So basically, you can also see source countries and, top tags. So this is for security threat intelligence team, and it is available to access on the Palo Alto Networks website if you have threat intelligence license and, having the autofocus in it. Fine. I think let's stop it here before I jump into, some other things which are a little bit more advanced. And you can ask questions if you want.
I'm quite.
Can you repeat? Your voice is breaking.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you listen me clearly now?
Yeah. Tell me.
So, as you mentioned earlier, this course is good for the person who have quite a the security industry. But I'm quite a new to this, so will it be recommend?
What's your background like?
I'm just new to the IT industry, 2 years of experience. Security is my background.
Okay. You have a
Hello?
security background. Yeah. Security
Yeah.
background, but like what 2 years of experience doing what?
In the endpoint area. Endpoint and a little bit of proxy as well.
Okay, fine. So networking wise, what's your current level of knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I have a not good, but a basic knowledge on the CCNA part, like router switches. I have those ideas which I
Okay.
gathered from my own.
Okay. See,
So,
I didn't say that you'll not be able to understand things. Okay, but the thing is, generally speaking, if you want to begin your career into security, like if there is anybody like maybe some of my cousin comes to me and asks me, okay, what's the best path? I would preferably say begin with Cisco, then go for Palo Alto. Okay, but since you have worked, like I'm not sure day in day out what do you work on exactly roles and responsibilities wise, but you can still understand this. Okay, and you can go to this later. Okay, it's it's good to have knowledge of some form of firewall before you jump into Palo Alto. But it's not like obviously Palo Alto cannot make a course and say the prerequisite is Cisco. If you have the suppose I would say there are two resources, time and money, right? If you have the time and money sufficient for Cisco plus Palo Alto, okay, then go ahead for Cisco first, then Palo Alto second. If you have like or maybe other resources, if you have limited and you want to invest directly on Palo Alto, that's fine as well. If you are limited on that, I think that it's not like you won't understand it. It's like you understand it far more clearer. Like I'll give you an example. Like when you open CCNA security, okay, there used to be this course. Now it's ASCO or something. Now if you I'll just make you go through the index. You'll realize that what I'm trying to say. I want to. Now see, if you look at here, okay, it starts from very base, like security concepts, threats, okay, VPN technology, cryptography, implementing then site-to-site VPN. Whereas here, what you will see is like network foundation protection, securing management, understanding, implement these planes, fundamentals. So it starts from very basics. Whereas when you will see the course further here, what you'll notice is that it says, okay, this is how you do global protect. They give you basics of global protect. Although we have VPN related information, but if you talk about, like, I'll give you an example from VPN point of view. If you talk about IKE phase 1, IKE phase 2, they are very much in detail in Cisco compared to, you know, Palo Alto training. Okay. Fine. Anybody else?
Hi
Who
Sudhanshu.
has a course, who has a question and not listening to Corona news?
Sudhanshu, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just have one query.
Yeah.
Like in Cisco, we are having that testing to the Pearson centers, but as I checked with Medita that they are providing all those courses for this Palo Alto, but they don't have the support for the certification exam. So in case I have to go for the certification as well, which centers provide that? Can you please clear me on that part?
See, basically, we don't even do that for Cisco. There is Pearson View. Like, you know, even similarly, you can go to there. You know, it's just like, have you given any exam? Any certification exam?
Yes, I am done with the CCNA routing and switching.
Yeah. So see, basically what you did was you exam right here, or you know, you can go for the certification exam directly on the test center. Okay. If you create an account here, you will be able to search your local test centers. So that is available directly with Pearson View. We are not a Pearson center. Okay. We can.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it. Actually,
Like,
I was.
Yeah. Even I'll tell you one more thing. Okay. Pearson View for Palo Alto certification. I'm not sure for Cisco they have or not. I think for Cisco, no, not yet. Okay. But if you look at Palo Alto Networks, they have this facility as well. Your exam, your location. Okay. This is started from last year, January. You can go directly online, right at your place, book the exam. When you have the exam scheduled, you can give it directly on your laptop. But obviously, they need to check the authenticity, so they'll ask you to keep the webcam on. Okay, and before you begin the test, they'll ask you to. The proctor there will ask you to show the room around that you have not manipulated it in any way, right? Like no reading material is available to you in hand or in front of you. So you can even give Palo Alto certification exam at your home. You can read more.
Okay.
Any of you is interested.
Thanks.
This is not available yet with Cisco.
Okay, it is available with Palo Alto only. Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think no question. Can we leave, Sudhanshu?
Yeah, whosoever doesn't have any question, they can leave the meeting. That way I'll for sure know.
Sudhanshu, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.